When I was a college student 4 years ago, I found myself working at a Walmart. It was practically impossible for me to obtain a job with reliable hours because of the disorganized jumble that was my educational schedule. Fortunately, the Walmart close to my college had an opening for a nighttime cashier and maintained its doors open 24/7. Unquestionably appealing, nighttime shifts went well with my dispersed class schedule. I landed the job after a fruitful interview, and for a while, life looked to be going well. The time passed quickly because the store was bustling all night long with a steady stream of clients. I frequently found myself working the register by myself and infrequently interacted with other employees. My nights were marked by the frequent appearances of friends. One of them was a man who always showed up at 1 in the morning. He always bought a mishmash of things, including clothes, toys, and miscellaneous trinkets. Strangely, he always arrived by himself, shied away from conversation, and left unannounced. Things took a terrifying turn one evening. The man appeared at my checkout lane as it got close to 1 in the morning, his typical calm manner replaced by an unexpected conversation starter. I was taken aback by his sudden chattiness when he inquired about my evening and weekend plans. His odd physical attributes included messy hair, a look of fatigue on his face, and eyes that shone with an abnormal alertness. He said a cursory thank you after paying for his products, then abruptly changed his manner, leaving me perplexed. I tried to get away, but he grabbed my arm with an iron grasp, pulling me in the direction of his car while making his intentions apparent. As I fought back and mustered the effort to shove him away, panic erupted within me. I jumped into my car and sped off to find a safer haven. I hurriedly contacted the cops while parking at a McDonald's and described the frightening incident. I gave them the stores and parking lot's CCTV footage, but the man remained a faceless enigma, leaving me feeling frustrated and anxious. I persevered in my work despite the ghost of that night following me everywhere. I was appalled by the things he bought. A ghastly assortment of garments and toys in varied sizes, which made me suspect a more sinister reason for his actions. I was struggling under a heavy burden of survivor's guilt and a fervent hope that he'd come back so I might save other people. However, my aspirations were dashed when the business stopped operating around the clock owing to unforeseeable circumstances, costing me my job. Even now, 4 years later, I still hope that justice will be done, and that he will be made to answer for his terrifying actions. I can't help but wonder if he ever had to deal with the repercussions of his terrifying deeds, as the memory of that unsettling meeting continues to haunt me. I started working at Walmart about 3 years ago, which wasn't my first option because of its soiled reputation. However, I was pushed to take the job because of the promise of reliable overnight hours. I was able to concentrate completely on replenishing shelves during the store's quiet hours while working the night shift, which seemed like a refuge from the commotion of client encounters. But fate had other ideas, and a strange event happened that I'll never forget. I started working alone at night after only a few days of the manager's instruction. Although the jobs were straightforward, the repetitious nature of the work had a spooky effect because of how large the store was and the distances that had to be traveled. On a Wednesday night, my shift started when the clock hit 9 o'clock. I started working on my duties when the manager gave me my assigned aisles for the evening. I was tempted to keep to myself by my reclusive nature, especially because I was a novice traversing uncharted territory. I was working when a strange thing happened. I was looking for the perfect place to put a box when a stranger touched me on the shoulder. I turned around startled to face him. He inquired about the location of the restroom with a courteousness that was almost disturbing. I gave him directions, assuming he was another recent hire in the midst of the continuous hiring spree, and I had no further thoughts about the interaction. I continued moving forward and meticulously refilled the shelves, aisle after aisle. I was shocked to see the same man again. This time, he stood awkwardly waving at the end of an aisle. I wanted to know what he needed because of his tense vibe. He suggested he needed help by stammering. I went with him since I was curious and perplexed at the same time. I was more unsure as I followed him around the shop. I noticed the odd sparkle in the man's eye as we passed another employee. I clung to the hope that he was a fellow new employee, struggling with the enormous layout of the business, despite my growing anxiety. We arrived near the main desk after our travel. He asked me to help him reach something on the other side of the counter as he turned my attention there. A terrifying conclusion came to me as I bent over the counter to try to identify the thing. A shiver of fear ran down my spine when a cold, blunt thing touched my back. He had a gun, and that fact hit me like a freight train. He tightened his hold, making me speechless. He ordered me to open the till, and I started to feel terrified. I tried to convince him of my limited access, but to no avail. His hostility increased with each time he made the same demand, luring me farther into the grasp of terror. Another employee walked by in the midst of this nightmare. He was given orders to open the register by the odd man who was barking at him. We were all paralyzed by fear. I suggested calling the management in an effort to avert tragedy. He consented begrudgingly, and I fumbled for the store phone. In an unexpected turn of events, the other worker ran away. The intruder's hold on me lessened as a result of his surprise, and he slammed me against the counter before escaping. With my hands shaking and trembling, I managed to contact 911. Thank goodness, nobody was hurt. His bold activities were caught on the store's security cameras, from his sneaky entrance just before closing to his sudden departure. The video showed his face unmasked, making it easier to recognize him and apprehend him afterwards. The weapon was later discovered to be a fake that had been cleverly painted black to resemble lethal authenticity. His arrest marked the end of the tragedy, but its ominous specter lies on. I continue to work at Walmart and develop relationships with my coworkers. Even then, there is a persistent worry that something else is secretly threatening the huge business. I'm plagued by the fear of running into an unforeseeable hazard. What evil entity might next appear out of the shadows? Raising a teenage son and a little daughter as a single mother working 2 jobs was difficult all the time. My load decreased as my kid matured and gained the ability to occasionally look after his younger sister. But the constant cycle of work and parenthood exhausted me. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, I got home from my second job, knowing the next day would be just as rigorous. I discovered out of desperation that I had not prepared anything for my children to eat while I was away. I had no choice but to make a fast trip to Walmart. They had a small window of time to organize everything, since they were the only store operating until midnight. I dashed to the store and got there just before midnight. I hated being the last-minute consumer, but the situation required it. My main goal was to get some freezer food for the kids so they could take care of themselves while I was gone. I felt a spooky sensation creep up my spine as I browsed the supermarket aisle. At the far end of the aisle, there was a tall, shadowy figure. I could feel his eyes on me, but each time I cast a sidelong peek at him, he pretended not to notice. His ominous presence created an ominous atmosphere, which made me feel more uneasy. I quickly snatched a few goods off the shelf and walked to the next aisle, only to discover that he was following me everywhere. He fixed his unwavering attention on me like a lion seeking its prey. I made an effort to ignore the chilly sensation that was crawling under my skin as he hid. He was a middle-aged man with messy hair and ragged clothing, as seen by a first glance. I addressed him and asked, "Can I help you with something?" In an effort to put the uneasiness aside, he murmured something while his lips curved into a sinister grin. It gave me the chills and proved that something was definitely wrong. I forced the anxiety to go away and decided it was just a coincidence, so I continued shopping. I gathered milk and cereal and then went to the self-checkout machine. I scanned the products and paid with a tiny tremble in my fingers. I looked around and discovered the man wasn't there, and I exhaled a sigh of relief. He might have grown bored or switched his attention to someone else. I saw my car as I emerged from the store and entered the parking lot that was poorly illuminated. The sight of dings, dents, and broken glass made my heart ache. As a feeling of vulnerability overtook my senses, panic crept up on me. I then heard distant footsteps coming up behind me. I was startled and turned to face the noise's origin. A terrifying aura surrounded the two men as they emerged from the darkness. One held a corroded pipe, and the other grinned evilly. Their ominous faces were exposed by the moonlight. One was younger and had piercing, icy eyes. The other was emaciated and unshaven. Fear gripped me as I searched for my keys, but I soon realized that I had little chance of getting away. I turned as I approached the parking lot's edge to see them drawing near. I suddenly had the strong need to flee. I rushed back towards the store, hoping that the safety of its fluorescent lights would be my haven, as I was out of breath, and my heart was racing. As the distance between us decreased, my heart began to rush. I hurried through the door, gasping for oxygen, as my panic drove me onward. My eyes were clouded, my lungs were burning, and when I turned to see the attackers, they had stopped at the door and were looking menacingly in my direction. When the cops showed up, the males had already disappeared into the darkness. My automobile was a total loss, and I was a nervous wreck. I found out via the press a month later that similar instances had happened elsewhere. The specifics, a series of targeted attacks that left their victims traumatized, were horrible. I can't help but wonder, was the man I met at Walmart merely a chance encounter, or was he a part of a bigger, darker strategy that's yet to be revealed as I think back on those horrific occurrences?